Good evening, everybody. Happy Game 3 day to those of you who celebrate. We have a really good show for you tonight. If you guys have watched, Derek and I have collaborated a couple of times on here in the past, and it is so much fun every time him and I get to do a stream together. This one I think is going to be particularly fun. Because he's got some stuff that you guys know how I am, how like I have things to say regarding I say some things that are rather controversial a lot of times because I feel like people are somewhat unrealistic about the team. I can be at times myself, but Derek is one of those guys that he says what's on his mind about the team, and he doesn't just bend to people who get mad at him for not validating their worldview. Him and I are very similar in a lot of ways as far as how we go about our content. So it's always a fun time when he comes on here, and that guy's got some of the best analogies for things in hockey that I think I've ever heard. So he'll be joining us here in just a few minutes. In the meantime, we're going to talk about what the series looks like numbers-wise so far. Carolina is up 2-0. They can go up 3-0 tonight. I'm personally not expecting them to, but we will discuss that later on. Total goals, Carolina has 6, Philadelphia has 2. Total expected goals, 7.14 to 5.4, and that's in all situations. 5-on-5, Carolina has scored 5 goals. Philadelphia has 1. 5-on-5 expected goals, 4.2 to 3.49 favors Carolina, with a 54.63 expected goals percentage at 5-on-5. Both teams have scored 1 power play goal. 5-on-4 expected goals, it's 1.42 to 0.58. Slightly favors Carolina, but Philadelphia is scoring above expected right now. Goals of any kind outside of conventional 5-on-4 power plays or 5-on-5 play has yet to happen. Total shots on goal, this is actually pretty close, even though there's a pretty big volume difference overall, 65 to 55, plus 10 for Carolina. And total shot percentage, 9.23 for Carolina, 3.64 for Philadelphia. That's from the last game. We don't need to look at that. And then overall possession, 85 to 67. Carolina owns 55.92% of the Corsi at 5-on-5. Fenwick 63 to 53, so Carolina owns 54.31 of that at 5-on-5. High danger chances are 19 to 14. Carolina owns 57.58 of that. And again, reiterating expected goals in all situations, at 5-on-5, 4.2 to 3.49. And Carolina has a share of 54.63 at all those. I expect after tonight, with Philadelphia having last changed despite the injuries and everything like that, despite those things, Philadelphia will, in fact, make this series closer on paper or maybe in general. So, there is a possibility, as we have seen from what Walt Ruff was saying earlier, that Alexander Nikishin will be back in the lineup tonight. That is good for Carolina, obviously. It's particularly important to get a guy like him back in the lineup on the road, because you need, that gives you one more weapon in your arsenal. Mike Riley has done fine, but Mike Riley is one of those players that benefits from being on the team or being on the active roster and playing in a game where Carolina has last change. Alexander Nikishin is a much more well-rounded, better, and more physical player, so he doesn't need something like last change to succeed as much as he has. That being said, I think Mike Riley has been fine. He's a 7th defenseman. He's playing like a competent 7th defenseman. No complaints there, if you ask me. So, not worried about that at all. But it would definitely be better to have Nikishin back in. Things I'm hoping for more than anything tonight. The Aho line. It's got to get going. And we're going to be saying that until it does get going. It will, but at some point or another, I wish that they wouldn't make liars out of me, because I've said for about 3 games in a row, oh, they're going to get going soon. They're going to get going soon. Okay, it's time to get going. The Aho line's got to get going. In the event that they do need to make a flip, Ehlers and Jarvis, I think, would be one to try if they don't do first-line Martinook again, even though that did work out just fine in Game 2. But I think flipping Ehlers and Jarvis would be an okay thing to do. I would have liked to have seen Rod take a longer look at Ehlers, Aho, Svechnikov for a line, because I think that line could be great once it figures some stuff out. If they're in a situation where they feel the need to or have the opportunity to do that, I wouldn't mind seeing that. And you already know Jarvis, Stahl, and Martinook works. And like I said, I've stated what concerns I have with Seth Jarvis trying to do anything that requires 2 hands right now. So that is my personal belief on that. I imagine otherwise, though, we will not see any differences in lines from Carolina. Philadelphia, I'll let Derek get in here and elaborate. They have recalled Jet Luchenko. From what I saw, he is expected to play tonight, and he has some deep thoughts on that. And I don't understand the logic of people who are arguing with him on it, because what he's saying is it's objectively true. Like, Jet Luchenko, like, is a better player than 35-year-old Garnett Hathaway and Grunstrom. Like, I don't know what more that you could possibly want from that. Goaltending, I'm expecting no changes as well. One thing I will look at real quick now that I've got my laptop here, because it makes it really easy for me to look up, stats and stuff, since I've got this here and I've got Natural Stat Trick pulled up all the time. We're going to take a look at some of the line numbers here, and eventually when I get a second monitor, I'll be able to display this stuff a little bit more actively. Let's go see the series lines. I like Natural Stat Trick so much better than Money Puck. It's just not as pretty. I'm going to need to get another mouse for this laptop because I hate this little pad. Okay. All right, so here's the big one to watch. The two lines that have been together the most are Logan Stankoven, Taylor Hall, and Jackson Blake. And then the other one is William Carrier, Mark Jankowski, and Eric Robinson. Makes sense why those lines have been together the longest and pulling the most minutes. They weren't, used in the blender in game 2 when Carolina needed to kind of spark something here. 20-37, 50 for Stankoven, Hall, and Blake. 23-16 for Corsi, so a 58.97 percentage. Fenwick, we won't worry about that so much. That's something I tend to look at in isolation. 3 goals for, 0 goals against. This is all at 5-on-5. Expected goals for, 1.5 to 0.95 for a 61.21 percentage. And their scoring chance breakdowns, total of 13 scoring chances. 6 high danger. 2 medium. Or 1 medium, 1 low. All right, so Derek is here in the studio, and we're going to bring him on.
Hey,
friend, how are you doing?
What's up? Doing all right.
Why is it every time you make a valid point, the first thing people do is attack your appearance?
Has that happened again?
Okay, you remember when I was like, "Hey, he's one of the most objective Flyers fans on here," and the guy and the lady was like immediately like, "Oh well, Baldy there, he does this has got to be click or rage bait," and I'm like, he made a valid observation. Like, just because he doesn't validate your worldview doesn't mean that he's wrong or stupid. Like, what the fuck?
And if I am wrong, you can attack the argument. Like, you can go off and try and prove me wrong, but for whatever reason, they always go right to weird attacks on my appearance. Like, I clearly have hair.
Definitely, you got more than hair. I mean, hell, you got more than I do. You got a lot more than I do. See, I wouldn't mind rocking this look on lives a little bit more often. It's just the best mine looks is like about 8 hours after I shave it, because it gives me the illusion that I just have a really short buzz cut. This is about a day of not shaving it. So now it just looks like, oh, you're trying too hard because it grows back so quick. What's left of it? So it's just more comfortable to wear a hat with a headset any damn way.
Yeah, for sure. So what do we get into?
The Jet Luchenko thing about the post you made about, if this guy is projecting to be a better hockey player, if you don't think he's projecting to be a better hockey player than Garnett Hathaway, who is currently 35, or Grunstrom, it's like people, that whole thing. I thought that was hilarious, yes. But I'll let you tell that story because you're going to do it a lot better than I can.
Okay, so I didn't really have a dog in this fight for most of the fight. I put out a post, I think it was yesterday, but it might have been the day before, when they brought up Luchenko to practice with the team. I would play all of these kids because the likelihood that we win a series against the Carolina Hurricanes is extraordinarily low. So I just want to throw all these kids in the fire, whether it be Luchenko, whether it be Bonk, whether it be Jiricek, and I want to see how they do. And I would be grading on a curve. If they come in and stink up the joint, I'm not going to hold it against them. But you know what? If they come in and they look really good in a very hostile environment, I would be particularly impressed by that. That would color my image of them positively heading into the next season. That's how I think of it. So I said as much, and then I guess there's been more discourse about playing Luchenko, and Charlie O'Connor, one of the Flyers beat writers, was talking about how, well, at first, his first clip was like, hey, it wouldn't be fair to the guys who've been here all year to play Jet Luchenko. Like these were the guys you came in with, so these are the guys you're going to ride with when the going gets tough. You don't bring in a kid like Jet Luchenko and just throw him in a lineup over your guys. That's not fair. And somebody came in and said, well, what do I give a damn about fairness? If Jet Luchenko is a better player, then Jet Luchenko is a better player. Mm-hmm. So Charlie's argument to that was, I don't think Jet Luchenko right now is a better player than Garnett Hathaway and Carl Grundstrom. And I'm sitting here going, well, if he's not, then how good do you think he's going to get? Because these guys aren't that good right now. So if you think he has yet to clear basically plug NHL status, then how good do you think he's going to get? Clearly not very good. There's not a whole lot of runway there, apparently. I'm sure he'd eventually surpass 35-year-old Garnett Hathaway. But if you're telling me he hasn't yet, my hopes for that player are not very high, even looking forward. Now, proceeds to make arguments I'm not making. For example, if you want to say, well, I don't want to throw Luchenko into the fire. Okay, that's fine. That's a completely fair argument. That's not the argument I'm making here. I'm saying if Jet Luchenko right now is not a better player than 35-year-old Garnett Hathaway, then there are some major problems with your 12th overall draft pick.
See, that's why I don't understand why people can't differentiate what you were saying. You were saying if Jet Luchenko is not better than the 35-year-old 13th forward that was scratched for Game 2, and not better than the guy who correct me if I'm wrong, who he was scratched for, with Carl Grundstrom, if he is not better than those two players, and he's entering that timeline in his development, because he'll be on what, year 3 now in his career, which is about the sweet spot where you start seeing a player's actual ceiling, or at least something close to it. You're saying if you don't think that you have a player that is better than the two of them by now, you have a problem. And this is a good environment to kind of see how he goes, or how he does in a very high pressure situation, because this is a big deal. And then it also makes sense why you were like, okay, you're throwing them to the fire, wouldn't hold it against him, but if you do well, great, because this is kind of a first time situation for him. Everything you said there was completely reasonable. And when I agreed with you about it, one of them wrote, oh, this has to be rage bait, and then they attacked your appearance, and they were like, I'm like, what did he say that was wrong? If I had $1 for every time that happened to me, like, because that was the type of heat I was getting a couple of years ago for some of the stuff that I said, and I'm like, well, am I wrong though? Like, prove me wrong. And some people made valid points, but there were a lot of people who were just kind of like, oh, no, everything's fine. And I'm like, no, it's not. Now at the moment, it looks fine, but I won't be singing that tune should Carolina play Montreal in the next round. You're going to sit here and watch me biting my fingernails off, because I'm terrified of that team, as I've talked about in the past. But I think everything that you said there was completely valid, and I don't know why the hell people got so mad about it.
I don't know either. I honestly think that for whatever reason, I portray myself in a way on X that makes people want to get mad at me. I don't try to do it, but I do at this point recognize that I do it, and I have not made an effort to change.
I'll just tell you this from experience. It won't do you any good to change, because it's not you, it's them. Because, I mean, I've done my absolute best to kind of like take the high road on some stuff and maybe not be so confrontational and be a little less disagreeable. Doesn't get me anywhere.
No.
I have people who will go in my comments and say, oh, you've never had skates on before. Bitch, I had skates on this morning. What, like, what are you talking about? Like, but yeah, it's like, it's just funny to me, because I feel like I've experienced a lot of that same stuff, but it's like, you made totally and then like you and I also have like a similar situation with, like, not so much me at this point, but like me with the Kokaniemi thing and you with the Mishkov thing, even though I think Mishkov's, there's a lot more discussion to be had there. The Kokaniemi discussion, it's pretty much over. Um, and like a cockroach is going to survive the summer somehow and still be a hurricane when the season starts next year. But it's like,
Now they're going to
yeah,
trade Kokeniemi for Michkov somehow. I don't know how.
dude, if that happens, I wouldn't know what to say. I wouldn't either. Like, how are we going to start our expansion team if we don't have Kokeniemi and Michkov?
Yeah, seriously. Well, what'll happen is Rick Tocchet will finally have won today. Keith Jones might have gone to the hospital, so he can no longer hold a gun to Danny's head to make sure he doesn't.
You can't be saying shit like that when I'm taking a drink of water. I'm gonna fucking spit all over my keyboard.
That is my running joke, is that the Michkov situation at the front office is like Rick Tocchet would ship him off to China yesterday. And Danny Briere, as per Danny Briere's usual arrangement, doesn't have a position on anything. And Keith Jones is like on the exact opposite of the spectrum. And so he has like a sniper rifle trained on Danny's office the entire time. And he's watching every time Michkov's name comes up. He was about to trade it for Quinn Hughes, and Keith Jones fired a freaking warning shot right, grazed his head.
Dude, that would have been like a game changer for you guys if the Flyers had gotten Quinn Hughes. I mean,
hey, if you're going to trade him, that's what you trade him for.
Yeah, like, well, it's the same thing. It's like, okay, it's like a couple of years ago. This was one of my infamous posts. I put the Norman Rockwell freedom of speech painting, and I wrote Shane Gostisbehere is better than Brady Shea. And there were people in the comments acting like that I just shot their entire family by saying that. Lo and behold, I was right. So when it became a possibility that Alexander Nikishin was going to get traded for Brady Shea, or for, oh, God forbid if that happened, I'd probably jump out of this window right here. When Alexander Nikishin was on the potential trade block for Quinn Hughes, I didn't say a word about it. There were a lot of people saying, no, this is a bad trade. No, if I say that, I can't in good faith say that, considering I just said 6 months ago or a year ago or however long it was that Shane Gostisbehere is better than Brady Shea. By that same logic, Quinn Hughes has to be better than Alexander Nikishin. Even though one is bigger, more physical, and has a heavier shot, one is still a better player. So I never said a word about that. I was like, if that happens, that's a par for the course deal. It doesn't happen any other way.
Yeah. No, exactly. But all of this does kind of dovetail into something I posted, and I actually told you I was going to talk about it before I posted it. Mm-hmm. One of the biggest issues that the Flyers have, not just in this series, though it has shown itself in this series, is that they want to be the Florida Panthers so bad. As an organization, they aspire to be the Florida Panthers, which there's nothing inherently wrong with that. Their problem is they have made exactly zero progress towards being the Florida Panthers. Now, they've gotten a lot of good players. They have a lot of good players on this roster. They don't have good Florida Panthers. That's a significant distinction. Michkov on the Florida Panthers would look like a fish out of water. Trevor Zegras on the Florida Panthers would look like a fish out of water. Travis Konechny would look like a fish out of water. Like, I can go down the whole list. Owen Tippett was actively traded by the Florida Panthers.
Yeah.
So you've got a lot of talent, and you guys actually described this on the series preview screen or series preview stream. They have a lot of talent up front that towards moving the puck. They have a lot of puck movers at the forward position. They can slice through the neutral zone like it's butter. And they've shown that through a good portion of the regular season. There was an interesting dive by Mike Kelly, who has those proprietary numbers from, I think it's Sportlogic he uses, where before the Olympic break, the Flyers were 19th in rush chances. Now, that doesn't sound great, but the context of being coached by Rick Tocchet, and I'm not even trying to bury Rick Tocchet, but it's like a well-known thing that Rick Tocchet and rush chances don't go together. The Vancouver Canucks employed Quinn Hughes for multiple seasons at the peak of his powers, and they've found a way to be about 28th in rush chances. So if you're telling me that the Flyers found a way to be 19th, that's actually pretty impressive. But then After the Olympic break, I believe they were first. Now, they get into the playoffs and they all of a sudden look a little bit more like the team before the Olympic break. Either way, point being, clearly this is a very dangerous set of forwards off the rush.
Yes.
And another thing you guys spoke about, this was, I believe, it was during the game 7 of Montreal and Tampa. So I kind of forget how that went in relation to this series. It might have been a game 1 recap, but either way, you guys broke it down really well. There's only a few ways to beat the Hurricanes, realistically speaking. There are not many ways. There's about 3. 1, you can just outspeed them. 2, you can out-Hurricanes the Hurricanes, which is what the Florida Panthers do, or did. 3, you can be just extremely precise passers. You can move the puck more precisely than anybody. You can essentially be the Tampa Bay Lightning of previous years, where those guys just had military precision up and down the lineup.
That's Montreal now.
Montreal now, yeah.
Yeah.
Even Buffalo, to an extent, is kind of flashing that to a degree.
I think last night
a little more in that direction. Buffalo, I really like the way Buffalo's built because they have a little bit of precision and a little bit of just pure forecheck nastiness. I like that balance. But anyway, the point I wanted to make there, what the Flyers can do to win this series is totally different from what they want to do. What they want to do is they want to out-Hurricanes the Hurricanes, which is going terribly. Very, very badly. What they can do, probably not enough to win the series, but certainly enough to win the fight, is they can take the Tampa Bay Lightning / Montreal Canadiens approach, where they can hope to put together a few military precise passing sequences that end with the puck in the back of the net. That is basically their biggest shot at winning. Vladar has to put up a strong game. They are not going to win the shots battle. They are not going to win the expected goals battle. They have to put together basically 3 or 4 sequences a game, and they got to score on 2 of them, and then hope you get a goal some other way, where it is tic-tac-toe in the back of the net, and probably starting from your own end. And yet they have clearly tried to play the other way. They want to out Hurricanes the Hurricanes. They're sending defensemen into pinch, and they're trying their hardest to make that forecheck into something, and it's just not working. It did not work very often. Even overtime, where they controlled a lot of play in overtime. The reason they controlled play in overtime was because players like Zegras, like Michkov, were like, well, I mean, we got to do something here. And they started doing crazy stuff to enter the zone and put together these sequences. That's going to be what they have to do if they want to get a foothold in this series at all. But the 2 problems are, 1, even if they decide to go that route, it's not as easily said, or not as easily done as it is said. So they could try and still fail. And 2, the bigger problem, they're probably not even going to try.
Yeah, that makes sense to me too. It's like that's the thing I've always talked about with Philadelphia and their current configuration. And one thing about Tocchet, one similarity that him and Brind'Amour have, I have to go back here a little bit. So when the Hurricanes were playing the Capitals in playoffs back in 2019, if they still had Barry Trotz coaching, Washington might have won that series because Barry Trotz could adjust to not having TJ Oshie. Todd Reirden, on the other hand, couldn't do that. I don't think he could figure out how to do more with less. Brind'Amour and Tocchet are both coaches who can do more with less. So if there was a lot of other coaches behind the bench other than Rick Tocchet, Owen Tippett and Noah Cates being out is a more catastrophic situation for them than it would be for Tocchet. So that's one thing where it's like, okay, missing these 2 important players, and I thought Cates had played really well in this series. He can make those adjustments. You know, he can do blue-collar type of adjustments in a lot of ways that other coaches can't. So can Brind'Amour. But all the speed that he has on that team, and like you said, how quickly they can fly the zone, how they can generate clean entries and generate good shots off of him and everything like that, I think that Philadelphia can do that a little bit better tonight and Saturday. Since they'll have last change, they can get better matchups that way, and they absolutely could use that to turn the tide of the series if they do it right, like you're saying. And like you said, even and I've experienced this many times as a Hurricanes fan, where it's like, well, they played really well. Why didn't they win? And I'm like, if I had $1 for every time that I heard that question, and I'd be like, the answers are it's a numerous amount of answers, but it's a very short list at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. It's actually similar. The Flyers are almost in the same position that I said the Penguins were in. The Penguins had made a really significant adjustment in game 3 that kind of shut the water off at 5v5 for the Flyers, where in game 1, they were just getting counterattacked to death. Like, they were trying to play their game. They would cough the puck up, and then it would be rush chance after rush chance for the Flyers. In game 2, they just said, all right, none of that. Nothing is going to happen this game. It was an extraordinarily, brutally low event game. Both teams were dumping it in and changing practically on command. And the Flyers just happened to win that just absolute drag of a game. It was game 3 where the Penguins finally figured it out and figured out the mix, so to speak, where they were starting to do a lot of stuff. They were sending their defenseman up into the play as a winger down on the weak side of the ice. So when the Flyers tried to do their clog the middle routine and basically take away controlled entries for Pittsburgh completely, it would be they would clog the middle, and then you kick a pass out to that defenseman. It's usually one of the really good skaters, Carlson, Letang, Gerard. And then one of those guys gets the entry. And the minute Pittsburgh gained entry throughout that entire series, they were not giving up the puck a whole lot. And there was really no answer that Philly had to that. But the problem is you can make that pristine adjustment. But if you're down 3-0, all you have to do is screw up once. And Pittsburgh screwed up once in game 6, and it was series over. It's not quite that dire where Philly is right now, but the general point remains. You could make the world's most immaculate adjustment, hypothetically speaking. At the end of the day, if you screw up twice, you're eliminated.
Yeah, that is true. And the adjustments that Philadelphia made going into game 2, it paid dividends early. I don't think Carolina... I knew that game was going to go somewhat that way. I didn't know how it was going to end, but I saw like when Philly came out, a lot of people were saying Carolina was flat, and I'm like, no, Philadelphia stepped it up. There's a difference.
Yeah.
And you guys scored twice in 39 seconds, and it was because the game was adjusted. Like, the personnel changes were one thing, but I also think the way that they executed was a little bit different. They were definitely... They did out Hurricanes the Hurricanes for some sequences, especially in the first period and especially in overtime, where they really did get on their horse on the forecheck and everything like that. And Carolina, it's almost shell shock to them when that happens, or a shock and all type of situation, because not many teams do it to them. And when it does happen, they're like, oh, wait, this is what we do to people? Like, this can actually happen. It can. Florida's done it to them before. But I'm really interested to see how this goes tonight, primarily because of last change. I don't know if Philadelphia is going to make what type of line change, or how they're going to do the lines and everything like that. I saw something about Zegras might be going back to center and Luchenko's going to be in and all that. What are you expecting them to do as far as the lines and everything? I don't think the defense is going to change.
So I don't think the lines have been confirmed, but we do know, just because Tocchet said it, the 4 centers are going to be Zegras is going back to center where he was game 1. Barkey is going to be at center, and then Couturier and Dvorak are going to be the 2 other centers. Which wingers are going where is a little bit up in the air. I don't think that's been said. I don't think there were practice lines, but Jordan Hall basically put out the lines he's expecting. And these made some sense. Let me pull these up just on my phone here because somebody sent me the image. Tyson Forrester, Christian Dvorak, Travis Konechny, Alex Bump, Trevor Zegras, Porter Martone, Carl Grunstrom, Denver Barkey, Matvei Michkov, Luke Glendening, Sean Couturier, Garnett Hathaway. And then the defense has been the same as it's been all series. Sanheim, Risto, York, Drysdale, Sealer, Andre. Well, Andre and Juleson have swapped, but...
If you want to send me that image, I'll pull it up on here.
Yeah, I
And
got you.
talk about it. Yeah, yeah. Send it to me on X, and I'll pull that up on here because I want to talk about that because like I actually like those combinations. Like I think that's a good idea, especially when you're at home.
Or actually, wait, hold on. Let me, because somebody decided to redline the Grunstrom line as a meme. So let me send the actual image with no memery attached. They were like, look at that Grunstrom and Michkov.
That would be funnier than hell, honestly.
I mean, if you want to go with that one, you can, but I'll send you both.
Yeah, yeah. I'll take the serious one, but grunts from Michkov, I kind of think that would be funny. I think that would be hilarious.
that is what they're actually expecting is Grunstrom, Barkey, and Beachcgolf. But somebody sent me the image with a red line there, like, look at this shit.
Yeah, I'm pulling the one up with the red line. Hold on. This is funny. I mean, if I had $1 for every time I went through this as a Canes fan, though, I mean, it's like when he put Ehlers with Martinook and Stahl, like he cannot be planning on doing this long term, and that was back in January, and it's still a thing.
Yeah, sometimes that sort of thing works. It has yet
like
to work
paper,
in this case, but
on paper that should not work at all, but it does. It's not been great in the playoffs so far, but like predominantly it has worked.
Ehlers is such a one-man transition and just in general a one-man puck machine. Basically anything you need regarding puck possession, like line mates optional for Nikolai Ehlers. He doesn't need help. He doesn't need support. He will just do that shit on his own. The red line really is hilarious when you blow it up on screen.
And someone sent it to you and said, "What the hell is this?"
Yes. Actually, you know what? I will say exactly what he sent over because it's actually a very funny line. Somehow Michkov will get blamed for the Flyers going down 3-0 to Carolina, and this is what he has to work with. In 5 years, we will have to look at Hockey DB to remember Grunstrom.
And it's going to be some random post like name this Philadelphia Flyer, and it's just like the front of him where you can't see his name on the back of his sweater, and people are like, I don't remember him. Actually, I want to see something. Have they played together at all in the series, those three?
No, not in the series. And actually not at all. Those three are new. Grunstrom and Michkov isn't new somehow, but the center for those before this was Noah Cates, which I don't mean this as an insult to Noah Cates, but that's measurably worse because Noah Cates, for all the stuff he's good at, handling the puck isn't one of them.
No.
Like Noah Cates is good at a number of things that don't involve the puck being on his stick, but once the puck are on his stick, his abilities become a lot more limited.
Noah Cates is good at anything that doesn't involve two hands.
Yeah, exactly. And when you pair that with Carl Grunstrom, at that point, you're asking Michkov to do a lot here.
I mean, from the standpoint of it being something completely different, though, it's like with Ehlers, Stahl, and Martinook. Ehlers is the puck possession guy, the entry machine, and everything that you need from. You can kind of get that effect with Michkov. He does it in slow motion compared to Nikolai Ehlers, or Ehlers is a fast forward version of him, whichever way you want to look at it. But I mean, Michkov wouldn't have to be the one going into the corner and digging the puck out. These two guys can definitely do that. He can just position himself to shoot or, make a play or whatever and everything like that. It would be interesting to see how these three operate off the rush because Grunstrom and Barkey, it's going to be skate to the other end as quickly as possible before anybody has a chance to gap up on you, whereas Matt Michkov is no, get closer. Okay, I go this way now. He dangles the shit out of you and he's gone.
Yeah.
It is an interesting dichotomy because Martinook, Stahl, and Ehlers are kind of like that. So, I mean, if you want a line to kind of replicate that one, that's a good way to do it.
That's a fair point. Actually, Barkey might be the piece that makes it work. And to say how, I will use an example of a somewhat nothing play from the Pittsburgh series. It sticks in my head purely because of how hilarious it is. So Michkov gets a puck off the wall in the defensive zone, and he's breaking out. As he goes through the neutral zone, he is like barely skating. He is basically faking out the Pittsburgh defenseman 6 times. He is faking the same pass, and the Pittsburgh defenseman keeps biting for it. This guy is paralyzed. This guy doesn't know what to do. He's not going to give up the dangle. He's not going to let Michkov get by him, but he's also not going to give up the pass. He's just in no man's land. All Noah Cates has to do is just beeline to the blue line, get a pass, and get an easy scoring chance. Noah Cates can't do it. And it's not even a skating thing. It's like he's thinking so defensively thing. He is like watching, even with Michkov going, are you gonna do something with that puck? Are you gonna dump it in? Are you gonna dump it in? And then Michkov's saying, I'm not gonna dump it in. I'm trying to make a play for you. Whereas eventually Michkov is like, okay, fine, and then dumps it in. If Barkey gets himself into one of those situations, Barkey's just going to make a beeline for the net. And he's probably going to get a breakaway or a semi-breakaway. He's going to get a good chance out of it because he really can skate. He really can skate. He can handle the puck a little bit. I actually like Barkey at center quite a bit because Barkey has a tremendous ability to cover a lot of ice because you really can't replace skating ability plus motor as it pertains to being everywhere at once. Sebastian Aho, much higher level, is a kind of an example of this. Mm-hmm. Aho is not a big dude, but he's freaking everywhere because he's really fast and his motor does not stop. And Barkey has that sort of approach. Barkey's problem, and it was a problem that manifested more on the wing, counterintuitively to a lot of people in hockey circles. On the wing, you're going to find yourself in a position to where you have to win or at least tie up a one-on-one puck battle along the boards. Like that 6'4" defenseman is going to pinch down, and if he's 220 pounds and Denver Barkey's 160 pounds, we know how this is going to go. Physics has already determined how this is going to go. Whereas when Barkey's down the middle like this, the centers aren't getting themselves in a lot of positions to where they are one-on-one in a battle, and it's pure your muscle versus my muscle. A lot of times centers are supporting battles. They're the second guy in. They're the third guy in sometimes. They're waiting for a pass, and Barkey can do that really splendidly. Whereas when he was on the wing and Alexander Nikishin or Keandre Miller was coming down that wall, Barkey just kind of had to surrender. There was nothing he could really do there.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And, that kind of gives Barkey a chance to simplify the game and just kind of stick to, the middle of the ice. Going one way, it's like beeline to the net, catch a pass, generate a scoring chance, because any NHL player that's in all alone is dangerous. It doesn't matter who they are, even if it's Mark Jankowski, even though he kicked a field goal the other night and still missed. And when people get mad at me for my memes, I would just like to remind you, I had an AI-generated meme where Seth Jarvis looked like a Chinese takeout container filled with rice, and he scored not 5 minutes later when I posted that. So
talking shit about players is the number one way to make them thrive.
It really is. It's like, maybe I didn't talk badly enough about Kokoniemi. That's the problem. I kept saying good things about him, and he never got any better, and things never improved for him. Maybe that was what I did wrong. But it's like, there were people in there like, hey, could you do an Aho one next? And I'm like, no, I'm saving that for later, because that's a limited capability for that to work. Now, one thing I am interested to see here, Glendening, Couturier, and Hathaway, the way that I think that line is going to be utilized at home, do you think that they're going to put them up against more, or try to get them more minutes against the Stankoven line since they're scoring more, or do they want to try and continue to keep the Aho line off the board?
That's a really interesting thing. Tocchet has always... he's been a little bit more fascinated with name and reputation than he has been with recent performance. So if I had to guess, he will probably keep that line against the Aho line and just figure that the Forrester, Dvorak, Konechny line can figure out the Stankoven line.
Mm-hmm.
If I had to guess that's what he'd do, honestly, I'd switch it up. I think I'd actually lean into something you were talking about, which is I would open things up and go with the Bump Zegras Martone line against the Aho line. Not because I think those guys can shut down Sebastian Aho's line, not even close. But if I can get Sebastian Aho trying to score, chances are they're going to expose themselves to a few counters that somebody like Zegras and Martone, especially with Bump on their side, can turn into chances of their own.
Because they got the speed to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny because I've argued for basically strategy like that this entire playoffs. Like depending on the line, of course, but I am very hesitant in general to think too heavily about matchups. I tend to think that if you're thinking too heavily about matchups, you are playing into the other team's game very easily. As in, like, here, perfect example. Do I really want Luke Glendening and Garnett Hathaway to be among my most played forwards? No, not really. But if I have to stick them again, if I have to stick those guys on the Aho line, they're going to end up that way. Like, those guys are going to play a lot more hockey than I really want them to because I've dedicated myself to matching those guys against the Aho line to shut down the Aho line. I talked about this in the last series against Crosby. Like, yes, I understand it's Sidney Crosby and you want to shut down Sidney Crosby, but at the same time, you're putting so much resource into shutting down Sidney Crosby that you're essentially shutting yourself down because Martone's getting fewer minutes. Michkov is getting fewer minutes. These guys that can score goals and really put the pressure on the other team are getting fewer minutes.
That makes perfect sense. It really does, because it's like when I think about a potential matchup between the Zegras line and the Aho line, if it becomes a defensive battle between those two lines, which it wouldn't be, there's too much speed there, and there's enough high risk, high reward type of play between the two of them. But if it were to become a defensive battle, the Aho line probably comes out with the net positive. If it becomes a ton of north-south chance generation, the Zegras line probably comes out with the net positive there. And it doesn't have to be a huge net positive. You're talking +1, maybe +2 to turn the outcome of that game between those two. I'm just really, I feel like that we're going to see something really different with the matchups, whether it's done deliberately or whether it's just like, one other thing I'm hoping for, I hope they'll put the whistles away and let them play, because I would like to see a hockey game that has more than, I think that only, I want to see how many minutes were played total 5-on-5 in game 2, because I don't think it was,
teams have 7 power plays.
I think it was 7. I think it was 6 for Carolina and 7 for Philadelphia power plays. I think it was. Let me go back and look at the series numbers here in total. So in game 1, there were 39 minutes and 12 seconds played at 5-on-5, to be expected, and most of the penalty minutes that were handed out in the third period were misconducts when they were trying to keep the game from getting out of control. Where TJ Luxmore turned into the kid from The Simpsons picking his nose saying, "I'm helping," and thinking that he got control of the game that he lost control of on his own. Caniac, stop me if you've heard that one before. TJ Luxmore lost control of a game in Raleigh. The only reason game 2 had 52 minutes and 31 seconds at 5-on-5 was because of overtime.
Yeah, it was almost a whole extra period.
Yeah, because I think it ended at 18:30 something was when Hall scored the... I'm going to look at it by period here, because I've got my laptop here so I can look at numbers and stuff. So the first period, there was 12:27 played at 5-on-5. Second period, 9:11 played at 5-on-5. Third period, 14 minutes played at 5-on-5. It didn't feel like that in the third period, though. It didn't feel like it was 14 minutes of 5-on-5. But in the second period, they played less than half the period at 5-on-5. And in the first period, they barely played more than half of it at 5-on-5. Yeah, I just hope they'll let them play a little bit tonight, man, because that got annoying. Every time I turn around, whistle, arms going up, and I'm like, dude, come on. It's the playoffs. Let them play.
Oh, God, yeah. Especially, like, I don't want to watch the Flyers on a power play. I want to watch as little of that as humanly possible, okay? Like, people are like, hey, you missed that call on the Flyers. I'm sitting there like, good. good. You really want him to call another power play?
I've experienced that so many times where I'm just kind of like, yo, can you decline? It's like there's times where I'm like, yo, send Svechnikov out there to slash somebody and make it 4-on-4. Like that, there were so many times where I was just like, I don't want to deal with this. Not so much this season as a whole, but it's like, even with all those power plays in the last game, there was only one power play goal per team in the last one, which I'm kind of like, anybody who really just is more of a special teams nerd than a 5-on-5 nerd, I think didn't even enjoy that because of how much that dominated the game, the whole special, or didn't dominate the game despite all the minutes that were played in a special teams capacity in it. It's just, yeah, I just hope they'll let them play a little bit.
For 13, like that's atrocious. What are we doing here? You're
In a
more
playoff
dangerous
game.
at 5-on-5.
Well, see, there for a long time, it was really bad a couple of years ago. Carolina would go out and they would have the most god-awful power play you can imagine. I mean, just absolutely like, yo, what are you doing? And then 2 minutes later, other team gets a power play. And then Aho and Jarvis would go and score or generate a chance, when their shift started, because normally Rod would start with Stahl and Martinook for the first penalty kill unit, and then Aho and Jarvis would be the next ones over the board. And I'm like, why can we not do this on the power play? It's like fundamentally it's the same idea in a lot of ways, but it's like, I just remember seeing that and I'm like, how is this even happening? How is this possible? It seems like by now they should have accidentally been scoring on the power play if they can generate chances this easily shorthanded.
I'm still to this day trying to work out how the Flyers are this bad on a power play. They keep adding more skilled players and they keep staying equally as atrocious. It's actually a freaking miracle. I don't understand how they're doing it. Like they started with, it was Travis Konechny and the Motley Crew. Mm-hmm. So I could understand how that's a really bad power play. And then you go and add Matvei Michkov, and it becomes Matvei Michkov, Travis Konechny, and the Motley Crew. It's like, okay, surely that can do, or you know what? No, I'm skipping a step because Tyson Forrester's got that freaking nuclear bomb of shot. So
yes, he does.
You got Travis Konechny, Tyson Forrester, and the Motley Crew. And I can understand how that's not that great. And then you fast forward a year, and then you get Matvei Michkov, Tyson Forrester, Travis Konechny, and the Motley Crew. I would at least expect them to be better when you add a player that skilled. And then they weren't. I don't know how they did it. But then they go and they add Trevor Zegras, let alone Porter Martone, who comes in later. But let's just focus on Zegras right now. All of a sudden, you got Zegras, you got Michkov, you got Forrester, you got Konechny. That's all four forwards right there if we're being logical. And yet somehow the power play is still equally as atrocious as it was during step one. I don't know. I don't even understand how that's possible. It is one of the 8 wonders of the world. And then they added Martone and it didn't get any better either. So like, I don't understand. Who do we need to add? Do we need to get Makar, Kucherov, and McDavid in here? And then maybe you have a half decent chance at having a league average power play? Like, what do you guys need? The front office was legitimately talking about, and these are some really skilled former players I'm about to name, that they were talking about, don't worry, guys. I got Danny Briere. I got Danny Heatley. I got John LeClaire. I got Wayne Simmons. I got all these guys. 800, 900 goals between them. Alex Ovechkin between these guys. All trying to figure out the power play. And they made 0 progress.
That's insane.
How is this possible? Like,
see,
how are they still a 15% power play?
Here's something that's funny about that, though, since you mentioned that. You remember the Anaheim Ducks last season. Mm-hmm. They were really good 5-on-5, and their special teams absolutely killed them. Otherwise, they would have made the playoffs last year.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's kind of where Philadelphia is, not so much on the penalty kill side of things, but definitely on the power play. And then Anaheim beat Vegas last night, and they played a really good game. I think Philadelphia is kind of like right there where because 5-on-5 is the most important thing. That's the most important thing you got to figure out, because most of a hockey game is played at 5-on-5, unless it's game 2 between Carolina and Philadelphia in Raleigh. Then apparently that just doesn't apply anymore. But they've got a lot of those pieces like that, because I feel like that those teams are similar in a lot of ways. very young. You know, you've got for the most part the right pieces. You just got to figure out how to line them up. I don't know like what the front office in Philadelphia's mindset is on maybe making a coaching change, because Carolina is not going to do that. Like Rod will retire coaching the Hurricanes when he's ready. And you know, at times I get mad about some of the things Rod does, not so much this year, but I couldn't imagine it any other way. Honestly, I'm kind of glad staying out of the coaching carousel, because you've experienced it recently with the terrorism moving on and the Antichrist coming in, as you say. And at least I don't have to worry about that. I get to be mad at the same guy all the time if I'm going to be mad at anybody at all. It kind of simplifies things for me. But I think that Philadelphia is kind of at that point where they have the personnel. It's just they have to figure out what the execution of it is going to be. And, you know, it's just, I look at this team on paper and I'm like, and this is without Tippett in the lineup. This is without Cates in the lineup. Like this is a good team for the guys you have to take the next steps and eventually be really competitive. I feel the same way about Ottawa. I felt that way about Buffalo for years before they finally started winning this year. I wonder, like with them, if it's a lot like it was with Carolina. A lot of times it seemed like it was a confidence issue. They would kind of start to get the ball rolling on it a little bit. They would have a bad power play, and then they would have another one and another one, and just snowballed. It's like, because this is not a bad team at all. Like this is a very good team. There's a lot to build on here.
Yeah, I think there's two fundamental issues, which is, and one kind of ties into the other. Number one, they have no idea what unit to run. They have no idea who their 5 power play players are, and their problem is there isn't 10. Like they want to go with this idea that they have 10 power play players and they can split the units up evenly and expect everything to be hunky-dory. No. You guys got good players, you got skilled players. You don't have so many of them that you can fill out 2 different power play units of great offensive players. That's just not going to happen. So you kind of have to make hard decisions as, you know, who's going to do this and who's going to do what on the first unit, and then worry about the second unit later. Kind of do the Tampa Bay thing where it's like, we have our guys, and then if the guys don't work out, then you made it through. You're all good. So they have to figure out just one unit to run with that they can trust to get chances and get goals. And they haven't been able to do that. One kind of significant but awkward thing is they're going to have to figure out a way to fit Zegras and Michkov on the same power play. There is a little bit of an issue where ideally they are playing the exact same spot. They're both on that right wall. And Zegras is more of a one-timer threat at this stage in both of their careers. The Zegras one-timer has been a good shot for them through the year, but Michkov is better at being the playmaker on a power play as compared to Zegras, which is kind of insane to say that about anybody compared to Zegras, but it is indeed true. So they got to figure out a way to get both those guys on the unit and contributing. They haven't done it yet. I don't know if Rick Tocchet ever will, frankly. I think Rick Tocchet is going to basically ride with Zegras as my unit 1 guy and Michkov as my unit 2 guy, and just in perpetuity. I don't think that's going to work. But anyway, you have to figure out a way to get those two on the same power play. The way I'd do it, I'd have one of them run the point. Michkov's actually surprisingly good at it. He can't backward skate to save his life. Just ask Jackson Blake. Well, Let me put it, he can't backward skate playing defense to save his life. Just ask Jackson Blake. He can backward skate with the puck like nobody's business. Somebody ask him how that works, but it works. Anyway, I'd live with the fact that you're going to give up some shorthanded chances. Have one of those guys run the point, one of those guys run the wall. And then I'd use Forrester on the opposite wall, Martone at the net front, and Konechny in the bumper.
That makes sense.
That's probably what I'd run with. And then once you do that, once you have a unit that you know, all right, these guys can contribute for me, you gotta actually act with some conviction on the power play. Their biggest issue isn't really zone entries. They enter the zone just fine. I mean, not always against Carolina, because who the hell does? But for the most part, they enter the zone just fine, but then they get in the zone and they spend 2 minutes meandering, just passing around the outside, going, wait a minute, what do we do here? I don't understand. What are we looking for? What are we even trying to accomplish? And you're going to have to get rid of that. The minute you get rid of those two things, the minute you have a coherent unit, and the minute you have a coherent unit that knows what it's trying to accomplish, then the talent, you'll have a half decent power play. Like, yeah, you don't have Nathan McKinnon and Cale Makar. So I say that as if Colorado doesn't have the worst power play known to man relative to talent level. But either way, yeah, you don't have right this moment legitimate superstars who are going to give you a top 5 power play, but you absolutely have the raw materials for a top half-ish of the league power play, which would be a freaking godsend compared to what it's been since 2021-ish. We're talking 6 consecutive years, mild exaggeration, of 32nd in the league.
So actually, that makes a lot of sense. Like, there's two things there that I want to touch on. One, the whole thing with Michkov being a good skater, going backwards with the puck, but not being so great defensively there. That's something that plagues a lot of guys, particularly, like, for example, defensemen, like defensemen that are, more of the offensively minded kind. Tony DeAngelo was one of the best skaters that ever came to Carolina. The reason he could not defend very well was because his gap control was always bad. If you randomly put Michkov in that position, his abilities or inability to defend wouldn't come from a lack of skating ability. I just don't. Gap control is more of a mental thing than it is a physical one in a lot of ways, because you have to anticipate, not bite when someone tries to dangle you at the wrong times, not be too close, not be too far. It's a very, very technical thing. That's one of the reasons why Slavin is so regarded, and Zub and Lindell. The list goes on. Forsling, in regards like that, because that's one of those things where you have to anticipate, be a little bit proactive, a little bit reactive, but not over proactive or reactive, or you'll get burned. Michkov doesn't have that in the skill set, which makes sense considering the position he plays. Now, if you're talking about a power play situation where you have him working the point where it's a little bit of risk and reward to give up those shorthanded chances, I definitely think he's got that ability to walk the blue line and use his vision and his ability to slow the game down to quarterback a power play, i.e. the way that a normal first pair offensive defenseman would. So what you're saying there makes absolute perfect sense. And the other thing about, for example, Colorado having Cale Makar and Nathan McKinnon, but still not having a good power play by any means, and Martin Necas on that, I think a lot of times it's kind of like if you put, for example, if you're trying to build something and you get 5 really, really smart engineers and you throw them in the same room, a lot of times that's going to hold you up because you've got, this is a dumb sounding term, but it does apply. You have too much intelligence and not enough to do.
Yeah.
It's hard to have people that are that talented, especially with the 5 you're talking about in Philadelphia there, having 5 guys that talented and asking them to simplify their game enough to make that happen. There's a threshold there that they might not be able to meet because it's just not in their DNA, and that's not their fault. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just the way it is. When Carolina put Jordan Staal on the power play in the regular season, that's when it took off. I think you just added someone who was a little bit more brute force, a little bit more blue collar, and took some of the guesswork out of it, and someone who just plays a simple game, and that kind of, got it over the hump for a long time. So, like, that makes perfect sense why that many players can't put it together in some ways.
Yeah, no, that does make a lot of sense. And it's really a point as far as gap control, because as I think about it, there are really only 2 forwards who immediately jump out to me as like they have good defenseman level gap control. Alexander Barkov and Mitch Marner. Those are the 2 guys I can recall seeing where it's like they are controlling a gap consistently while skating backwards and making plays to kill rushes.
Yeah, and they don't look out of place at all.
Exactly. Like, they legitimately look like a defenseman. It's why Marner got away with running the point both in Vegas and in Toronto for the last year he was in Toronto.
No, that makes perfect sense. And then, like, but yeah, I like the idea that you're saying there, just because, I mean, if I'm coaching the Flyers and I'm given a choice between having Rasmus Ristolainen and Matvei Michkov run the point, I'm probably, it's not exactly a coin toss for me. I'm going to take Michkov if I want a goal. point of
Yeah,
the power
exactly.
play is to score a goal. So it's like, who's going to give you a better chance to do that, Risto or Michkov? Michkov is the guy that's going to do that.
Especially because he really does create a lot of offense from that up top position. It's one of the things that he's going to have to realize about himself. Like, and this is more of a personal thing. Even at 5-on-5, he thinks of himself as like the guy who's going to go and get it done down in the net front. He wants to be a grittier player than he's going to be able to be at this level. And he was kind of used to at lower levels and even in the KHL to an extent to where like he could play a sort of hybrid game, the muscle/skill game, just off of being really gritty and really stable. His balance is spectacular. And so he would do that. He would live at the net front and he would make his skill plays from there. And he can do that to an extent. Like, obviously, he's had some success doing it even at the NHL level. But at the NHL level, he's often running into the fact that as a comprehensive athlete, he's not going to be able to outmuscle NHL defensemen a whole lot of times. He's not going to be able to outspeed NHL defensemen a lot of times. So he can't really play the hybrid game that he has grown up playing. And he's going to have to play the more pure skill game. He's going to have to be, ironically, a softer player to succeed. And you kind of see that with every time he almost accidentally goes up to the top of the point, up to the blue line, gives himself that kind of space to work with. He almost accidentally creates goals. Like he did it against Montreal. It just so happened that on a delayed penalty, he switched positions with Bonk, and he's running a point. He's walking the line. He winds up perfectly walking the line, and it's a tap in or it's a deflection goal from Martone because he has an ability to shoot a puck through a keyhole. Like the Flyers broadcast was like, man, Lane Hudson should really be playing better defense on Porter Martone here. Meanwhile, Lane Hudson left like a 3-inch gap between his stick and his leg that Michkov found a way to fit a puck through, and then Martone tips it. Like,
that's not on Hudson then. Like,
yeah,
fundamentally, he did the right thing.
He fronted Martone and did a really good job of it. If it was any other shot, he was going to block the shot, but there was this minuscule hole in his coverage, and Michkov hit it. And then Martone gets an easy tip, and it's a goal. That's the kind of thing Michkov can do. A lot of his power play points last year were based on him sort of switching places with the defenseman, getting up top, running the wall himself, and then making offense out of that. He scored quite a bit just off of that sort of thing, where it was like a shot to a screen or another tip or a pass down to Konechny, who was running that wall. So that's really going to be his game, is working the top of the zone like a Kucherov, like a Jack Hughes, and using his skill. I don't think he's fully realized that himself, but one way to help him realize that, really, and this is including a 5-on-5, stick him there on a power play and make him do it.
See, that's not the best way to learn is to do it in practical application. Like, you see, I'm surprised I didn't piss more people off the other night with something I said. And I think I sent it to you, where I'm like, I know this is going to piss people off, and I'm standing by it. I think Jarvis needs to come off the power play for the Hurricanes. Because his shoulder is cooked. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
It's like, ideally, your top power play unit, you have 5 guys to varying degrees, obviously, but you have 5 guys who are lethal scoring threats on their own, good at creating chances, have good vision, cycling the puck, and being able to skate. Jarvis still fills four of those categories to some degree or another. But anything that requires 2 hands right now is kind of difficult for him. I mean, granted, he had that one laser of a shot, and everyone's like, look, he's fine. I'm like, normally he's done that 3 times in the playoffs by now. At least. Yeah. Right now, he's not doing that because his shoulder is screwed, and everyone knows it. And, people are like, oh, they're hitting him there. I'm like, yeah, that's what I would do too, if it were up to me. Like, you don't just be like, oh, poor baby, your shoulder hurts, I'm not going to check you there. No, that's the name of the game. That's going to happen. Do you like it? No, but if you get a chance to do that to the other team, you're going to do it. So the lethality is not there with the shooting for one thing, and a lot of the board battles that he normally wins because he uses that low center of gravity to kind of tuck himself in there and separate somebody from the puck. He's not been
Yes.
able to do that either because that's hard to do enough on its own. Doing it with one hand is much harder. So that's why I was like, Jarvis probably needs to come off the power play. And they're like, oh, second unit. I'm like, no, entirely. Like, pull him off of it. Like, that's not me being negative towards him. I don't think he's playing bad. It's just I acknowledge the situation with the shoulder. And I don't want anything changed on the second unit at all anyway, because that's Carolina's better unit right now. But that's the funny thing with special team situations, though, especially the power play. It's like you can put together like almost four of almost any player, and if they skate well enough and have good enough defensive instincts and good enough gaps, you can have a successful penalty kill with four random players if they're tactically sound, one might say. A power play does not work that way. Power plays are brain surgery compared to penalty kills.
Oh, yes. 100%. And you're right about Jarvis. He kind of does need to come off the power play. And I say that as somebody, the first time I came on the show, I was waxing poetic about Seth Jarvis and how good I think Seth Jarvis is for probably a sound 30 minutes.
Yeah,
I really do think it's a matter of time before he is the best player on the Hurricanes, even over Slavin, even over Aho. He is going to be one of the best wingers in the league. I think he's got one more kind of leap in him developmentally, especially if once he unscrews his shoulder, because the package right now is kind of similar to Prime Marchand, where he really does have that low center of gravity. He can protect the puck as an undersized player magnificently. He can make all of the skilled plays. His stick skills were what got him drafted initially, but then he took a sort of almost, again, miraculous development once where he became not just a good skater, he's one of the better skaters in the league. He is ridiculously fast, especially so this year. He's only getting more and more explosive. So
and
at
that's
some point,
amazing to me that his skating is as good as it is, because you notice his strides are not very long. It's all
no,
quick feet with
they're
him.
not.
It's like he covers maybe this much ice with every push off.
Yeah.
It's just like he's like goddamn Speedy Gonzalez. Just, but yeah, there's no stride extension at all. I think that's why he changes direction so quick. But continue with what you were saying.
But yeah, no, and you're right. It's funny because that does help him as far as change of direction and agility and being slippery. So he's got the best of both worlds as far as skating profile. He's extremely agile, and he's also extremely fast in a straight line. He has pretty much every trait except for shooting right this particular moment. But once he gets his shoulder repaired, he has pretty much every trait you could desire in a hockey player. And that's where he's going to end up. He's going to be one of the very best wingers in the league and a true superstar. But right the second, you can see the shoulder is bothering him in a lot of places right now. Shooting, first and foremost, but even his puck handling isn't quite as sharp as it usually is. He's not making quite the same moves that he usually can, which makes sense. His board battles have been a bit off because of that. It's affecting a lot of his game, which isn't to say he's not an effective player right now, because he is a very effective player still, which really just goes to show you how good he was before. But for the moment, the Hurricanes are going to have to operate with him in a more insulated setting. Like, I would want him off the power play partially just to take some off his plate.
That
Like,
was
I
part
kind
of
of
my
said
rationale, just to reduce his minutes so that he's not totally killing that thing.
Yeah. Like, I kind of said this about Travis Konechny. And because a lot of people are saying the reason Travis Konechny is having a disappointing playoffs is not because he's Mr. October. It's because he's hurt. I'm like, all right, that makes sense. If he's hurt, then maybe we shouldn't be playing him 24 minutes.
Yeah.
That makes sense. If he's so hurt that it is compromising his abilities, then okay, if he thinks he can play, that's cool. But maybe we should take it a step back as far as how many minutes he's playing. Like, we're putting him in a really bad spot. And it's sort of a similar thing with Jarvis right now, though not to the same extreme, frankly. Every shift you're sending him out there, you are running a risk that he does something. And I don't think the Hurricanes would let him play if he could make that shoulder worse. I don't think that would happen. But in all of his efforts to compensate for that shoulder, does he injure something else? That's a possibility. Does
Yeah.
he just injure something else, period? That's also a possibility. And I would want to minimize that possibility wherever possible.
Yeah, that was part of my rationale of it because the top unit's not producing anyway. And keeping Jarvis on it, it's like you're sitting there hoping, okay, maybe, okay, it's going to work this time. It's going to work this time. And it's still not doing it. It's just, I'm so afraid of something bad happening to him from playing too many minutes while his shoulder is bothering him. And like you said, pointing out the fact that, him compensating for that shoulder might make him hurt something else. That's the other thing that I would worry about with it as well. If it's anything like my dad's shoulder, because my dad messed his shoulder up when he was in the Air Force and he just had surgery on it. Like his shoulder has been messed up longer than I've been alive. And the VA finally, after 36 years, part of this is on him for not being proactive about it, but I'm going to blame the VA because that's what veterans do. The VA finally fixed his damn shoulder. In a way, I'm glad it waited so long because they had better technology, because the doctors at the VA probably haven't gotten any better. So it worked out pretty well. But I just know that, like, watching his shoulder, because he works at an auto parts store, so he lifts tires and oil drums and stuff like that all day. There would be some times where he's totally fine for an entire day, lifting all this heavy stuff, batteries and everything else. And if you ever seen like Fleet and Marine batteries and stuff, those are big. I remember one time he went to pick one of those up. He looked totally fine. He went back to go pick another one up, and then I saw him. I heard it pop, and he like flung it out like this, like Wacky Wavy Inflatable Arm Tube Man, and he walked around and did this for a few minutes, and it ended up being fine. But I could tell by the look on his face that there was just some sort of sharp pain that went through there. It would be really bad at times when he would wake up in the morning because you're laying in bed at night and you're immobilized, and he'd get up in the morning, and it would take him a couple of minutes to get it moving. So whatever's going on with Jarvis, it's probably something similar to that, because it was torn rotator cuff in my dad's case. It had been torn a little bit, just enough to bother him, and it just kept getting worse and worse and worse over time. If my dad's shoulder, if that will happen to his with what he's doing, Seth Jarvis being a professional athlete playing a contact sport, yeah, he's got good medical, personnel there to help him and everything, but he's also, the attrition factor is also significantly higher for it.
Yeah, 100%. And from what I understand, it sounds like he's always been dealing, well, not always, but he's been dealing with this to a lesser degree for a while now. As in, it's a similar situation where Jarvis could have had this repaired some time ago and just has put it off forever. Is that right? I've heard a little bit about that.
He put it off this year because he wanted to play in the Olympics, which I'm glad that he did, because when he didn't make the team initially before Braden Point decided not to play, and then he ended up, getting put on there and everything like that. And then he played well in the Olympics, and then there were a bunch of people in Canada saying, oh, he should have never been on the team. And I'm like, on a team like Team Canada, Jarvis is a role player. You don't get a ton out of him on the score sheet. That's the whole point of having a guy like that there on Team Canada. At the NHL level for the Hurricanes, he's a difference maker when, he's playing well and he's healthy and everything. Completely different dynamic. But that's part of the reason he put it off. But he did a lot of rehab on it over the summer, and it worked, because for a while it was not even noticeable. I'm just afraid that it's hit critical mass at a very inopportune time. That's what I think is happening, because you've got this entire season plus the Olympics now that it's had the wear and tear on it. And injuries like that, they and I'm kind of speaking from experience, because this is what my knee did before I actually started actively, rehabbing it and lost all the weight and everything like that. There were some days where it's not a problem. And then there's other days where I'd be out walking my dog or doing whatever, and it would just randomly buckle on me. And it might have been because the temperature was a little bit different outside, or I slept on it funny, or multitude of different things. But it looks like with him, it's hit that point of semi-critical debilitation.
Yeah. In that case, just to even make the point, you really do kind of want to nurse him through the playoffs. I perfectly understand. You're not taking Seth Jarvis out of the lineup if he can still play. He is a good enough player that you want Seth Jarvis in the lineup in some capacity. But if I were the Hurricanes, I would really be watching what that capacity is. And that might even mean taking him off the penalty kill at times, just to give him a bit of a break, because those are even harder minutes.
Yeah. See,
especially in series like this, where it's like, look, the Hurricanes have a distinct enough advantage that they would still be favored to win if Seth Jarvis was not even in the lineup. So
that is
if
true.
you're getting, let's say, 16 minutes of Seth Jarvis instead of 21 minutes of Seth Jarvis, well, you're still extremely favored to win and you're up to nothing. Like, where you really are going to need Seth Jarvis is in the conference finals, yes, but if God willing for you guys they make it there, you're really going to need Seth Jarvis against whoever comes out of the West,
Yes.
probably the Avalanche. You are going to need all hands on deck against the Avalanche because that team is a freaking juggernaut. And
No, I
that's what
agree.
I'd be thinking about if I were Rod right now. Like, look, you're getting past the Flyers. I think even the most ardent of Philly fans can admit that is the most likely outcome here. That you would have to do something tremendously wrong to not make it past the Flyers at this stage in their build. Like, for some reason, I say this and people think I'm just like dumping on the team or something. No, I'm like, this is like me saying the Hurricanes were not going to get past, the Pittsburgh Penguins. They didn't even play, I don't think, in like 2018. They were in
Right.
totally different phases of their build as a team. That's where the Flyers and the Hurricanes are at right now. The Flyers can legitimately just be happy to be here in the second round of the playoffs. That was never expected of them, to the point that I remember somebody was talking about how the way they were playing at a certain point was super conducive to winning hockey. And I said, so you expect them to do so much winning that they're going to not only make the playoffs, but win a round? And that guy was like, oh my God, don't galaxy brain leap the argument. That's insane. That's not what I'm saying. I would never say that. And lo and behold, they did all of that. So we probably should have said that. But that's only making the point. That is how much people didn't expect the Flyers to be where they are right now. So it was a massive success that you even got here.
Yeah, no,
To wrap
that's a
that
good
up,
way to look at it.
yeah, the Flyers are the Hurricanes don't need to worry about getting past the Flyers, at least not significantly. The Hurricanes need to worry about getting past whoever wins the series between Buffalo and Montreal, but they especially need to worry about, if they get into the Cup, beating the Avalanche, where you will need Jarvis at whatever he can give you. And if that means kind of taking a load off for him in the Philly series, I'd be doing that all day. Easily, no
Yeah.
questions asked.
The penalty kill, it doesn't bother me so much him being in on it because, like I said, it's anything that requires two hands.
Right.
There, it's like he can still block shots, make good defensive plays, have a good stick in the right place, and all that type of stuff. I'm not so much worried about that. And that's on a normal night where there's not 100 penalties called per team. That's about 8 minutes total, and in his case, about 2 minutes and 30 seconds since he's on the second penalty kill unit with Aho. So that wouldn't worry me so much. 5-on-5
Right.
doesn't worry
That's
me so much.
secondary, yeah.
But at the same time, to your point, Carolina has like to steal a term from you. Carolina basically has the Justice League of penalty killers throughout the
No, they do.
they have the Justice League of penalty killers. So I don't know which one Jarvis would be. I think he'd be the Flash, honestly, because he's got that quirky type of personality. The Flash can take a night off and throw Green Lantern in there, whoever that is, to go with Aho, who would clearly be Batman, or maybe Saul would be Batman, whatever. But either way, you have the Justice League of penalty killers. Jarvis doesn't have to be there. It is nice to have him there. If the game is on the line, maybe you put him out there. But him being out there killing a penalty in a 0-0 game 10 minutes into the first period, that's one of those times where I think you can kind of limit his minutes a little bit. And if anyone were to say, well, then that's just going to make him look like he's hurt, I'm like, the whole damn world knows that he's hurt. The league knows that he's hurt. Artem Zub knew it when he hit him. And people got mad at Zub for it. I'm like, Artem Zub did his job. One of the reasons that I turned on Scott Morrow in one shift was in game one last year, he had a perfect opportunity to lay Matthew Tkachuk out when he was playing at 50% health at best. The dude's screen was flashing red saying, "You are hurt, get to cover." And Scott Morrow had a perfect opportunity to vaporize him like Mr. Manhattan did to Rorschach in Watchmen. And he just pulled up and gave up.
Oh, yeah.
At worst, he would have got a 2-minute charging penalty or an interference call. But if it take one penalty to get Matthew Tkachuk out of a series, he would do it to you without a second thought.
Yeah.
So that's why I was like, but he just straight pulled up, and then that was the 3 goals that were his fault, 4 if you count the dog pog, were all forgivable. I'd be like, okay, young player in a not great situation going into the playoffs. Kind of not too dissimilar from what you were talking about with Luchenko earlier. Like the situation that he will be in, or a similar situation he'll be in when he plays tonight. All Morrow had to do was finish that hit, and I would have probably still been okay with him being in Carolina if he would have stayed. But when I saw that, I was like, no, get him out of here. And luckily they did. But players are going to do stuff like that when they're given the opportunity to do so. And anyone who says that they don't, that's just patently not true. They're not going to come out and say it unless they're Brad Marchand, because he doesn't care. He has fun saying stuff like that to the media. But that was one of those things, like Zub went for that shoulder because he knew it would hurt him. And I'm not mad. I'm not happy about it, but I'm not mad at him for it, because if it were the other way around, it would have been done to him.
Yeah, 100%. There is something to be said, especially in the playoffs, about killer instinct, about if you have a hurt opponent, a compromised opponent, and you can take them out entirely, it is pretty much your job to do so. You are legitimately, quite literally, paid to do so.
Yeah, I'm not saying give up a grade A scoring chance to get it done. Don't go out there and get a match penalty to get it done, because that hurts the team. But if you have a chance to, finish a hit on somebody, maybe a step late or something like that, or, oh, oops, my stick came up, or something. Nearly everybody in the league, except for maybe Jacob Slavin, will do that. Like,
right, exactly.
But just about anybody else is going to make that play when given the opportunity. But I saw the fear on his face when he pulled up from that hit when Scott Morrow did, and I was like, nah, I'm done with this guy. I don't like him anymore. And it was literally the Toy Story meme where they're dropping Woody into the box saying, I don't want to play with you anymore. That's basically what it was for me. But yeah, Jarvis could afford to take some time off the penalty kill with what Carolina has for penalty killers amongst the forwards. Like, everybody on that team, except if you had to put Taylor Hall on the penalty kill, I think he'd be fine. If you had to put Nikolai Ehlers on the penalty kill, I think he'd be fine. Is it the ideal situation? No, but it's better than Jarvis being out there with one arm.
Well, he might spend 2 minutes just skating around with the puck, Kuznetsov style, and kill the penalty that way.
I could see that happening. I absolutely could see that. They just give it to him, and he just goes around the neutral zone doing figure eights around the face-off dot.
Actually, that sounds extremely entertaining. We got to get this to Rod. We got to hook this up.
Yeah, I want to see that. But it's like one of the funniest things that I ever saw, like interactions that you were in, with like when the Flyers social media account got hacked, and someone said that the password was "play the right way 77" or whatever it was. I'm like, I can see that applying to the Hurricanes too. Oh, no, I think this will be a good game tonight. I still think you guys are going to win tonight. I really do.
I wouldn't be surprised if they won tonight, because I do expect, as much as I'm kind of prepared for a sweep, I don't actually expect a sweep. It's really hard to sweep anybody in the NHL, and it's really hard to sweep through your first 2 opponents in the NHL. Like, at some point, the Flyers are probably going to land a punch here, and it would make sense if it was tonight.
Yeah. See, I've always called game 3. I've always called it game 2, part 1. Or I'm sorry, game 1, part 2. Sorry, I got my wires crossed there. I've always called it that just because the series doesn't completely start over, but like when you go to a new building and they have last change and they have the crowd on their side, and you Philly crowds, you can be a little rough to play against. And Rod, that's why I love the comments he made. He's like, no, they're not mean, they're just fair. If you don't play well, they're going to let you know. See, in Carolina, it's not so much like that. In Carolina, I feel like it's a little bit more, and I was guilty of this too during the Eric Stahl days, like, and I've said this multiple times, it's more of a scapegoat the goalie, scapegoat the captain, or scapegoat in particular players. But as far as like players that they like, they'll basically forgive them for anything. I'm totally not guilty of that with Jesperi Kotkaniemi at all, in
of course
capacity whatsoever. None whatsoever. I have never defended him when there was nothing to defend in the slightest. But it's like there's things like that, and Philadelphia is one of those crowds that, like, if you're playing well, you're going to be, the sun is shining on you. If you're not, then they're going to let you know. And that's why when Rod said, no, they're a fair crowd, they let you know if you're not playing well. Because Rod's best hockey was actually played when he was with the Flyers. Like, yeah, he won
Yeah.
a cup with Carolina, but like as far as his heyday as a player, that was mostly Philadelphia.
I remember I heard, and this is all like super old stuff. They they actually might have had an opportunity to keep Peter Forsberg in the Lindros trade that they ended up making. The difference is they would have had to send Rod Brindamore instead.
That's
As
an
much
alternate
as
history
good
right
as
there.
Rod Brindamore was as a player, I still just imagine the sheer possibility of Peter Forsberg and Eric Lindros being on the same damn team. In the 40% of games that they played, they beat everybody.
That would be something. Ooh, that would be something. That
Every
really
time I
would.
hear of Rob Brindamore playing in Philadelphia, that always hits the back of my mind. Like, man, and it's not like I'm mad or something, but I just think about, man, if those two played together, God, the league would be in trouble. The
It
league
would.
would be in dire straits.
Wow. Yeah, that is something interesting to think about if that had happened. Yeah. Because one of the things is it's like I remember watching you know how they'll show the old games on NHL Network the summer?
Oh
They
yeah.
were showing they were showing an old game with when Forsberg was still in Colorado. And one of the Avalanche commentators, he said something that was very intuitive. He said the only reason that Peter Forsberg doesn't put up Gretzky's numbers is because he actually plays defense. And
Uh,
I'm like, I
yeah.
have to agree with that. Yeah, he was yeah, Gretzky was better, obviously, but like as far as who's a more complete all situations player, that was Forsberg.
And he was doing what he was doing in like the peak of the clutch and grab era where he was not the biggest guy. Now, obviously, he was not a small guy by any means,
He was
but
strong, very
he was
strong.
very strong for his size, like outstandingly so. But he was not Eric Lindros, just as far as how big he was. And that he still managed to do what he did is one of the more impressive feats, frankly, in NHL history. Like, Peter Forsberg became my favorite hockey player of all time, not even because of his Colorado run, because the Colorado run almost entirely predates me, but purely because he came back to the Flyers for a couple of years in 2006. And even that somewhat post-prime Peter Forsberg, I watched that guy as a kid, and I was like, oh my God, this guy is fucking amazing. Like,
He could still he could still throw the reverse hits even in the later parts of his career. He was so good with that. Well, I mean, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about with Jarvis. I mean, don't get me wrong, Forsberg is way better at this, but the whole puck protection, using the lower center of gravity, being stable on your skates to protect the puck, and use your shoulders and your back to push someone off you, and that's in the clutch and grab era, like we were talking about, which there was still a little bit of that post lockout. So, because I remember when a lot of that stuff started going away. When I made that video about Aho and Rod, there's one particular clip that I used where I think it was Fernando Pisani and Rod are going to take a face-off during Game 7 in 2006. And these guys are like practically jousting each other off of the face-off well before the puck is dropped. Like the linesman isn't even thinking about dropping the puck yet, and they're already, they look like they're rowing little boats in opposite directions the way that they're trying to get set on this face-off. None of that would fly today because they would be like, oh, no, you're out. And then the roll up, oh, you're out. Crowd starts booing. Okay, new guy in here. And then 5 minutes later, you finally have the puck drop, and then they blow it dead for a false start anyway. But back then it was just so incredibly different. But the fact that Forsberg could play that way in that era, like you said, that's incredible to be able to do that back then, because you got away with. There were times like somebody would start to transition the neutral zone and everything like that, and they had to do it on the other side of the red line, after a short pass because two line pass was still a thing, and someone would be practically putting you in a headlock, and the officials are like, eh.
Yeah, it was crazy. Of all the guys you can say, like, imagine if he played in this era. To me, Eric Lindros is a standout for that, but the biggest standout of imagine he got to play in this current era, it is Peter Forsberg. That is the one guy to where it's like, yeah, things look dramatically different if guys weren't allowed to do to Forsberg what they were allowed to do back then. Like, especially because the game is kind of caught up to where he was mentally and his vision. The things he saw and the plays he made while he was carrying entire teams on his back, like opposing teams, quite literally, just ridiculous. Absolutely unbelievable.
It does remind me of like the memes and the cartoons, like where the wide receiver's carrying the football and there's 3 or 4 people hanging off him while he runs to the end zone like nothing's going on. That was a lot of the stuff that Forsberg did.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, no, this will be a good one tonight. I'm looking forward to seeing how I'm interested in the matchups. Maybe not as much as Rod and Takadar, or maybe less, like we talked about, because like you said, it's like if you start thinking too much about matchups, it can be bad. But they're definitely going to be different in some capacity tonight than they were in the first 2 games.
Yeah, for sure. And, there's extremes to what I was talking about. Look, if Nathan McKinnon is on the other side, you're matching up your defensive players against Nathan McKinnon. If Connor McDavid is on the other side, et cetera, et cetera. But outside of guys who are like that, I'm talking the top 5 most dangerous offensive players in the league. I just think you run into a point of diminishing returns very quickly.
Yeah, no, and that makes total and complete sense too. One last thing I want to talk to you about, considering we both have teams that are, that like Carolina's core is getting older, but they're kind of building a new one. You guys have your core essentially built, a couple more pieces to add and everything like that. Here's one thing I've always thought about when it comes to what players you add, based on needs and based on what you think the lineup needs and everything like that. I'm a fan of the idea of redundant scoring. For example, the Hurricanes were rumored to be heavily in on Erik Karlsson at one point. And I was like, I don't think that they need him. I think that would be kind of wasted cap space. And it doesn't matter whether you win 4-1 or 6-1, you're still winning the same amount of games and getting the same amount of points in the standings. Yeah, the goal difference is a little bit higher, but that's very rarely, if I can't remember a time that that's actually been needed in the tie-breaking criteria. At least not for lower seeds, maybe for the higher ones. With the future that Philadelphia looks like they've got, what's the biggest need that you think that they need to add over the next 3 seasons or so?
I would say, it's funny, if you asked me this at any point basically before the last 3 months, I would have said a center, naturally, because the center situation in Philadelphia is not good. And it's not that it became particularly good since then. But I think the biggest issue at this point isn't the center so much as it is the breakouts in general. Right now, the Philadelphia hockey team is almost like the opposite of the horse drawing, where on the back end, and I don't mean just on the defenseman, I mean like in the defensive zone, it's the stick figure. On the rear end, it's the stick figure. And then coming out from the midsection of the horse to the face, it is this gorgeous drawing. That is basically the Philadelphia Flyers as a hockey team right now. They have to struggle their way through every single breakout, not just against the Hurricanes, but against an average NHL hockey team. And then once they get it, then they just start slicing through teams from the red line on. And if you can get either a defenseman or a center, because it's kind of, some centers really do impact the breakout a lot. And some defensemen really do impact the breakout a lot. Whoever they get, whether it be a center or a defenseman, the number one thing I'm looking at is their ability to make clean outlet passes from their own end. Like if we were talking about getting Erik Karlsson, my only gripe would be about the age, like obviously. But if you somehow found a way to make 25-year-old Erik Karlsson available, I don't know that there's anything I wouldn't give up for a guy like that at this point, because that is, to me, the absolute number one glaring need. No matter which player you get it from, to me right now, more than a position, the Flyers need a phase of the hockey game to be addressed.
That makes perfect sense. And it's like, you do get a little bit of that with Drysdale, though. Like,
yes.
The
and you can kind of see what a revelation he is during his shifts. And so if you can get, I think Drysdale has another leap of development in him, or at least another step of development in him. I think he's figuring things out. And so he might come in next year being able to make the same moves he makes on retrieval and then also make that perfect pass out of the zone a lot more consistently. I wouldn't be that shocked. If you can get one more guy who is like that, then you are really cooking something here, because at that point, it's not me going, all right, when's Drysdale coming out? Because otherwise we're getting hemmed in here. Oh, yeah, the Zegras line is on the ice. Who's out there? It's the Juleson pair. All right, time to spend the whole shift in the defensive zone.
I think you guys have been a little bit better to Juleson than Vancouver fans were, because Vancouver fans, like, they hated Noah Juleson from what I saw. They blamed him for everything wrong. Oh, well, why did they burn the city down in 1994? Oh, that was Noah Juleson's fault. Bro, Noah Juleson wasn't born yet. All right, fine, it was Noah Juleson's parents' fault. Like,
they had Noah Juleson. Noah Juleson, the baby, was conceived, and they wanted to burn the whole city down because they knew 20 years.
But Vancouver blamed him for everything. And I'm like, bro, you got way bigger problems than Noah Juleson.
Yeah. I try to be fair to Noah Juleson, and really most of the Philly crowd is, where you will definitely get comments like, all right, why on God's green earth is Emile Andre sitting in favor of Noah Juleson? And those are fair questions to ask, honestly. But there is a balance between asking these questions and remarking about when Noah Juleson tries to move the puck and fails miserably. And then also not blaming him for the entire 60-minute hockey game as he played 11 minutes.
See, Juleson, I think if he has a good puck mover with him, if you guys acquire another guy like that, or maybe two, like you get one for the top pairs, and then like if Juleson's on a third pair with someone that can move the puck for him, I think he becomes a much more effective player. And as far as Emile Andre goes, I don't like him when Carolina plays against him, but generally he's the type of player I like because he's got that bite and he's got that edge to his game. He's very irritating. I like that about Emile Andre.
And it's funny because he's consistently very good at exactly the thing I'm talking about. The reason I've kind of like not put Emile Andre in that conversation at all is because the organizational trust in Emile Andre is at an all-time low. And I don't know what it is other than Tocchet just doesn't trust him. Tocchet just doesn't like him. And it's Emile Andre is not important enough of a player for me to call him the Antichrist over that. So, all right, I guess if you really have that much against Noah or against Emile Andre, fine. But to point it out, Emile Andre is very good with the puck on his stick in his own end. Yeah, sure. Is he a little bit high risk? Is he going to make some turnovers that another guy won't? Sure. But that's pretty much every guy of that archetype. You are going to have some that go haywire and go the other way, but he's going to get you out of your zone cleanly a lot. And that, as it turns out, helps to win hockey games. Like, it's been essentially 2 years now that the Flyers with Emile Andre in the lineup and without Emile Andre in the lineup are two different teams as far as their win-loss record. And obviously that's not all on Emile Andre, but it's a relatively large sample size at this point, and you could at least say he's probably contributing to winning in a rather significant way. Not because he's a perfect hockey player, but because I just spent a good 5 minutes explaining how they really need help at that one thing he's really, really good at.
Yeah, because him and Drysdale are probably the two best at generating breakouts as far as Philadelphia's defensemen go.
Yeah, exactly. Sanheim is a little bit, he's good at it, but he's very reliant on having a runway for his own speed. Like, Drysdale is a little bit smoother on his edges and can make a forechecker miss more often. Whereas Sanheim, the way he's going to beat the forechecker is he is just going to bull rush and hope that he gets to the spot before the forechecker does. Which, because he's so fast and because he's so long and his strides cover state lines, yeah, that's actually a decent thing to hope for, and he gets that done fairly frequently. But it is the difference between Travis Sanheim, who is like an all-around kind of good at everything guy, versus a real breakout specialist.
Now that makes a lot of sense. That was one of the things that, like, see, that's one of the funny things. I remember when Burns was still in Carolina, like his last 2 years, for all of his faults. If you didn't get him on the first forechecking attempt, typically the puck was out of the zone. The problem with
Yeah.
it is when he started losing a step, the first attempt to forecheck him became much more successful in a lot of situations. Emil Andre is a long way from having something like that happen to him, and Jamie Drysdale's only going to get better at it. If this series is played 3 or 4 years from now, it's going to be a lot more interesting. And I said the same thing about Carolina playing Ottawa. So it's like, I do want to see like what Philadelphia is like once they figure that half of the ice out, because like you said, the horse drawing analogy, that does perfectly describe it. You know, it's like if Carolina hems Philadelphia in their own end, I'm like, ha ha ha, I'm in danger is the thing. And then they get to the other side of the red line, and then Carolina's, ha ha, no, I'm in danger.
I saw this meme recently where they edit the "I'm in danger" kid to have laser eyes. It's like, I am the danger.
That's what it is. It's like one on one, and then you get to the other side of the red line, and then it's the one with the red eyes saying that I am the danger. That's what it is. It's like, but yeah, I'm no, I think Philly's going to be a really good team down the line. I just what I wonder about, and I you would have the more of a pulse on this than me. What do you think the future is for Tocchet there?
I think it's kind of up in the air in that this next season is going to be really big because expectations are going to come into play now. This year, nobody had any expectations whatsoever. Next year, if things go south, let's say they come out playing a lot more October, November, December Flyers hockey, which is to say grab ankle hockey, and Dan Vladar regresses and no longer has the best 5v5 save percentage in the NHL, and they're picking 7th overall next year, yeah, Rick Tocchet will not be long for this job. But at the same time, the other side of this is if Rick Tocchet proves that he can take the next step and help this team take the next step, rather, yeah, he's going to be playing or not playing out, but coaching out the remainder of his very long and very lucrative contract. No question about it. So it'll be a very interesting time for Rick Tocchet because Comcast doesn't give a damn about the money. They will pay $50 million to coaches to not coach. They truly don't care one bit. But at the same time, if Tocchet proves that he is, one of the key guys to making this whole thing work, then yeah, he's going to be here forever and a day, especially because, it is a little bit similar to Rod in that a former player for the team, a very good player for the team, like a lot of people in the organization want Rick Tocchet to work. And that's even for reasons besides Rick Tocchet as a coach. They just want Rick Tocchet, the former Flyer, to work. They get a lot of criticism for really hanging on to former Flyers and making themselves a sort of, I don't want to say retirement home for former Flyers, but kind of, let's be honest, that's what they love to do.
Danny Briere and
everybody with any decision-making power is a former Flyer, okay? And they want it to be that way because, as Dan Hilferty said, these people know the city. So, okay, they want it to be that way. They are going to give Rick Tocchet every chance to make this work. However, Rick Tocchet has a lot of skeptics, of which I am one. And if things don't go well next year, if the team regresses next year, they're not going to blame the roster. The first guy they're going to blame is going to be Rick Tocchet.
All righty. Yeah, it's very similar in Carolina too, because it's like the coaching staff is entirely made of former Hurricanes. So it's like, and the funny thing about it is Jeff Daniels was an assistant coach on the Cup team. That's how long he's been coaching. And, him and Rod played together, obviously, in the early 2000s. And Daniels also coached the Charlotte Checkers at one point. So there's a lot there. So there's a lot of similarities. And Tim Gleason, I think, has done an excellent job in Carolina with the defense and everything. Oh, what do we have here? Nikishin is in the lineup tonight. That'll help. That'll help a whole lot, especially on the road.
Hey, that'll help for my viewing pleasure. I like watching Nikishin.
Yeah, I hate that he got laid out the way that he did by Clevin, but I mean, I knew that was coming after what happened in Game 3, and I'm not as mad about that anymore. And at least Clevin was relatively honest with the media that, I mean, I think I would want blood at that point too if somebody took out Slavin or something like that. So I mean, I kind of understand. I mean, hell, I did. I was waiting on somebody to beat the shit out of Sam Bennett that night a couple of years ago, and it never happened. But my friend, this has been excellent. but I think I'm gonna go walk that big rodent that I have over there and cook me some dinner. And he's over there curled up. Hey Frank, you wanna go for a walk? Hey buddy.
Look at him perk up.
Oh, that's my pal. Yep. Yeah, no, I'm serious. I'm gonna take you for a walk. It's not a gimmick. He has the funniest facial expressions, I swear. Him and my Chihuahua both do. You hungry? You want dinner? Oh, you really like that word, dinner? He's like, man, stop teasing me, bro. Yeah, one of my nicknames for him is Dog Vander Holyfield because he's actually missing a chunk in his right ear because he got into a fight in the dog park one time and lost part of it. Like,
Oh
you can barely see it, but he's like, you can see it if you're up close, but he's missing a chunk out of his right ear because he got into a really bad fight, and I had to rush him to the emergency vet, and they had to surgically reattach it because it was like hanging off.
Oh my God. Yeah, you know
Yeah,
what? I can see a little bit of a difference in one ear.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was like I felt so bad about that because like I tried to get my hand in there because I'm like, I'd rather this dog bite my arm than bite my dog, and I didn't make it in there in time, but everything ended up being okay. I mean, I had to sell my truck though because I couldn't get the blood out of the back seat no matter how hard I tried, and I just couldn't stand looking at it anymore. But yep, buddy, we'll get you walked, and then that'll be it for the night. But my friend, thank you very much for coming on here. This has been, as always, an excellent discussion. It's always fun to
Definitely.
talk to like-minded people who also get criticized by people who watch 10 games a year and look at box scores and then tell you why you're wrong about everything and then never really argue with your argument.
Yes, absolutely. You know, it really is a pretty niche crowd. There's not a whole lot of us out there. So whenever we can get together, it's a fantastic time.
Yeah, when the season's over at some point, I'm gonna get you. I don't know if you follow Devil's Joint or not. He's a really good friend of mine too. I'm gonna get him, and I'm gonna try to get a bunch of like Metro Division creators together, and just try and talk about everything there. Um, but yeah, I on Saturday I hope I'll still see if you can make it and everything. That's gonna be a big long stream, so you can come and go as you please in that one. That's gonna be like 4 hours that I'm gonna do between like 1 and 5. Or I might just have you for like right before the game or something. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
But I
Mhm.
think we'll have a lot to discuss after tonight because I think this game is gonna, in some way or another, it's gonna change the complexion of this series greatly, I think.
Agreed, for sure.
All right, my friend, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
And I will message you during the game while we send memes back and forth about stuff as always.
Perfect.
All right, brother.
All
Thank you
right.
again.
Yep.
All righty. Everybody, if you're not following him, that is Derek Dunn. His handle on X is @suitablealias. Very, very cool guy. I will do the comments here because we got a decent amount of them, and then I'm going to get ready to get settled in and watch the game. Griff says, let's go Canes, and so does Bobby Marshall. I agree. Need Ghost to light the lamp tonight. He's been quiet. Yeah, he's been very quiet. I'm kind of disappointed in him, honestly, because when we did the first round stream, he was actually my pick to be the guy leading the Hurricanes in points, and that's not remotely happened at all. Scott Thomas says, Carolina wins tonight. The series is ours for the taking. I don't think they'll win tonight. I really don't. I mean, it would be cool if they did, but I don't think they will. Griff also says, let's go. Hoping Nikishin draws back in the lineup, which fortunately he has. Zegras is a pest. Yeah, Zegras has grown on me a little bit since he went to Philadelphia. Like, I'm still not a Zegras fan by any means, but he's grown on me since he got to Philadelphia. Bobby Marshall says, agree 100% on sheltering Jarvis. Yeah, and like I said, that's not me trying to have any negativity towards Jarvis. I'm just acknowledging the reality of the situation. Dylan, what's up, buddy? Just got done watching someone with the Flyers say they got last change. No way we win now. This one's going to be hard to win. Philadelphia having last change. I mean, that's part of the reason Game 3 is so hard. It's kind of like you hold serve at home the first time you play at home, and you hold it more with last change. So that's going to be a factor. Dylan says, well, remember the Rangers suck because of Miller. Yeah, I think that narrative is all but dead now. I've seen some copium about it still, but Keandre Miller has been Carolina's best defenseman in the playoffs by far, by a country mile. On both sides of the puck. Been very impressed with Keandre Miller's game. So we do know that Alexander Nikishin is for Carolina. Jet Luchenko will more than likely be in for the Flyers. So the complexity of this game is going to be a little bit different. No Cates, no Tippett. Carolina will be fully healthy and Philadelphia won't. That being said, Tocchet is one of those coaches that he's a blue collar coach. He can make adjustments. He can do less with more. John Dottridge, 6135. Welcome to the show. Miller has been a damn beast. Yeah, Keandre Miller has been Carolina's best defenseman in the playoffs by far. I want to look at the numbers, and don't get me wrong, Sean Walker has been a big part of that. But I think that Keandre Miller has been outstanding throughout these playoffs, and it's only a matter of time till he has a bad game. And when Keandre Miller has bad games, they are nuclear bad. Hoping if he's going to get it out of the way, get it out of the way tonight. But he might just consistently play well through the entire thing, but he has been excellent. So that's going to be it for me, everybody. Oh, wait, we got one more here. Dylan says, "Will Nikishin play physical or ease his way back into it? If he's good to go, he's probably gonna play his game. If he's good to go, he's not gonna ease back into it. You can't really afford to ease back into it in the playoffs." Damon says, "Need Aho to show up on the score sheet. Hate to admit this about my favorite player, but I'm starting to think we're not going to get the next step from him at this point." I don't know what's up with that line. Now, this is not me justifying the lack of production on their part, but they've had some tough matchups. The Pinto line is the closest thing you're going to find to the Stahl line in the league. And they had to play against that line last round. And then they played a lot of minutes against the Couturier line in this round when Philadelphia has been able to get that matchup. That's a difficult shutdown line to play against as well. So teams are expending their best assets to try and shut down that line because they know what it's capable of. That's part of the reason why sometimes you see lines like that dry up for certain periods of time in the playoffs. I'm hoping that they'll finally get it started tonight. Tonight would be great. If you saw earlier in the show, me and Derek were talking about who might be lined up to if you have an Aho versus Zegras line matchup, that's going to be a lot of north-south play, and it's going to be very fast, and both sides are going to give up chances. If it's a more defensive battle, the Aho line comes out with the net positive. If it turns into air hockey, then the Zegras line would probably come out with the net positive from that. Kel Senior says, "Who's the new core that Carolina's building?" So when I refer to that, I refer to, granted, a lot of these are unproven quantities, but they do look good so far. Serrato, Ryabkin, Nadeau, Legault, Nystrom. There's a lot of important pieces in there that will supplement the future of this team, especially as Aho and Slavin start to get older. And then you've got ones that are on the roster already that are kind of part of this current core that will transition heavily into the future core, and that's guys like Keandre Miller, for example, Logan Stankoven, Jackson Blake. Not to mention, I expect the Hurricanes to do something in free agency. It kind of depends on how the season ends. I don't know who's going to be that guy. Someone I would look at as far as a realistic acquisition would be someone like Bobby McMahon to maybe replace Martinook in the future if they decide to go that route with it. There's a lot of good stuff going on there as far as the team that Carolina will have because they don't make panic trades. So I think that that's going to be great. Bobby says, "Awesome show. Let's get this W." Thank you, Bobby. I appreciate you being in here, buddy. Mike J says, "Wonder if RBA keeps Jarby with the Stahl line tonight." From what I saw, the last I saw of the lines, I'll double check one more time to see if there's been any updates. I'll go on game day tweets and see if there's been anything new there. Canes round 2, game 3 line rushes. So this is the most up-to-date you're going to get. Svechnikov, Aho, Jarvis, Hall, Stankoven, Blake, Ehlers, Stahl, Martinook, Carrier, Jankowski, Robinson, Slavin, Chatfield, Miller, Walker, Gostisbehere, Nikishin, and Anderson in net. So it appears that there are no changes for the Hurricanes. Let me see if we got anything new on the Flyers here. Because we were talking about those line combinations a bunch. Flyers game 3, lines and warm-ups. Forrester, Dvorak, Konechny, Bump, Zegras, Martone, Grundstrom, Barkey, Mishkov, Glendening, Couturier, Hathaway, Sanheim, Ristolainen, York, Drysdale, Sealer, Andre, Vladar in net. So changes in Philadelphia are made out of necessity since Cates and Tippett are not there. Carolina, it appears that there are no changes. In the event that this game starts going south, then flipping Jarvis and Ehlers is an option, or what they did in game 2 where they bumped Martinook up to the first line, and it ended up working out well enough for Carolina to take that game to overtime and win. Dylan says, "One day Ivan, Cal, and Nikishin will be on the same team." Scary, huh? Yeah, for real. So no Tippett still for Philadelphia. No, unfortunately for them, no Owen Tippett. Good for Carolina, not good for Philadelphia. All right, guys, I'm gonna get the dog walked. Get ready for the game. I will talk to you. I will talk to you guys after. Mike says, "I wonder if Carolina wins tonight. Does Tippett come back?" If it would depend on where he's at with whatever this injury is, I think. If it's if he can play, he will. And I think it's probably the applicable case tonight. If he can play, he will. Whatever he's dealing with must be pretty serious if he's not playing tonight, because this is going to be Philadelphia's best and arguably only chance to really turn this series around. So, all right, everybody, y'all have a good night. I will probably do damage report sometime tomorrow evening. It has been fun. I will talk to you later, and let's hope the Canes can have a good showing tonight.